unaware she was the secret billionaire who just bought his father's failing company. Husband called her useless. Wife sat in wheelchair as he mocked her disability. What happened next will shake you to your core. You're nothing but dead weight, Imani. A burden I'm tired of carrying. Those were the crushing words Jameson Reed spat at his wife before storming out of their Buckhead mansion, leaving her alone in her wheelchair, tears streaming down her face. He had no idea the woman he belittled had just acquired his father's crumbling empire for $600 million. What unfolded in the following hours will make you reconsider everything you believe about strength, independence, marriage, and the price of underestimating the person who loves you most. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, I need you to do something for me. If you're watching from Atlanta, Chicago, Brooklyn, London, Amsterdam, or anywhere else in this beautiful world, drop your location in the comments right now. Let's see how global our community really is. And while you're down there, smash that subscribe button, because stories like these, real stories about real resilience, don't tell themselves. Hit that like button too. It takes 2 seconds, but it helps this channel reach people who need to hear Imani's story. Now let's get back to the moment everything changed. The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Reed residence, casting geometric shadows across the Italian marble floors. Imani Reed sat in her custom wheelchair near the breakfast nook, her hands wrapped around a porcelain cup of Ethiopian coffee, watching steam rise in delicate spirals. She wore a cream silk blouse and tailored navy slacks, her locks pulled back in an elegant updo that accentuated her high cheekbones and amber eyes. At 32, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that most people mistook for fragility. The accident had happened 4 years ago. A distracted driver, a rainy evening, and in one brutal moment, Imani's life had split into before and after. The spinal injury left her unable to walk, but it hadn't touched her mind, her drive, or the fire that burned behind those thoughtful eyes. What it had done, however, was reveal the true character of the people around her, especially her husband. Jameson Reed descended the curved staircase, adjusting his Patek Philippe watch, his tailored charcoal suit fitting perfectly across his shoulders. He was handsome in the way that opened doors, tall with smooth dark skin, a carefully groomed beard, and the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove himself. His father, Gerald Reed, owned Reed Automotive Solutions, a once thriving parts manufacturing company that had supplied half the South. Jameson had grown up in country clubs, private schools, and summer homes. He expected life to continue in the same comfortable trajectory. "You're up early," he said, not quite looking at her as he grabbed his briefcase from the console table. "Couldn't sleep," Imani replied softly. "I wanted to catch you before you left. There's something we need to discuss." He sighed, the kind of exaggerated sound that suggested he was already exhausted by the conversation. "Imani, I have a meeting at 8. Can this wait? It's about your father's company." Jameson froze mid-step, his jaw tightening. "What about it? I know things have been difficult. The quarterly reports, the debt, the suppliers pulling out. How do you know about that?" His voice sharpened. She met his gaze calmly. "I pay attention, Jameson. You leave documents around. You talk on the phone. I'm in a wheelchair, not in a coma." His face flushed with irritation. "You have no business worrying about my father's company. That's family business. Real business. Not something you'd understand." The words landed with practiced cruelty, the kind that had become routine over the past 2 years. Ever since the accident, Jameson had slowly transformed from attentive boyfriend to distant husband, and finally into someone who saw her as little more than an obligation. A charity case he'd been trapped into caring for. "I was just trying to help," she said quietly. "Help?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Imani, you can barely help yourself. You need assistance getting dressed, getting into bed, getting anywhere. What could you possibly do to help a multi-million-dollar corporation?" She looked down at her coffee. her reflection rippling on the dark surface. I thought maybe I could review the financial statements. Offer some insight. Insight? He stepped closer, his voice dropping into something colder. You were a junior accountant at a nonprofit before the accident. You balanced budgets for charity galas and donation drives. That's not real finance, Imani. That's playing with monopoly money. Her fingers tightened around the cup. I had ideas, strategies that could... Stop. He held up his hand. Just stop. You're embarrassing yourself. My father's company is drowning because of bad investments, supply chain disasters, and competition we can't match. It's not something you fix with a spreadsheet and good intentions. Jameson. You know what your problem is? He set his briefcase down, crossing his arms. You don't know your place anymore. Before the accident, you were sweet, supportive. Now you're trying to insert yourself into things that don't concern you, like you're trying to prove something. Maybe I am trying to prove something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe I'm trying to prove I'm still the woman you married. His expression softened for just a moment. A flicker of something that might have been guilt or perhaps just exhaustion. Then it hardened again. The woman I married could walk, Imani. She could go places, do things. She wasn't stuck in a chair, needing help with everything. The silence that followed was suffocating. Imani's breath caught in her chest, but she refused to let tears fall. Not in front of him. Not anymore. Is that really how you see me? She asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. As less than? Jameson picked up his briefcase, straightening his tie in the hallway mirror. I see reality. And the reality is, I'm carrying dead weight. My father's company is failing. My marriage is failing. And I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. Then why do you stay? He paused at the door, his back to her. Because I'm not a monster, Imani. Because walking away from a disabled wife would make me look terrible. Because despite everything, I still have some decency left. The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. Decency, she repeated softly. Is that what you call it? He didn't answer. He simply walked out, the door closing with a quiet click that echoed through the empty house. Imani sat in the silence, her coffee growing cold, the sunlight crawling across the marble like it had somewhere to be. For a long time, she didn't move. She just sat there, breathing, feeling the weight of years pressing down on her shoulders. Then, slowly, she reached for her phone. The screen lit up with a notification. An email from Cornerstone Acquisitions, the private equity firm she'd been working with for the past 8 months. The subject line read, "Congratulations, Miss Reed. Transaction complete." She opened it, her eyes scanning the formal language, the legal confirmations, the wire transfer receipts. $600 million had changed hands overnight. Reed Automotive Solutions was now a subsidiary of Meridian Holdings, the umbrella corporation she'd established 3 years ago under her maiden name, Imani Okafor. Her father, Kwame Okafor, had been a brilliant investor, a man who'd emigrated from Nigeria with nothing but ambition and a gift for seeing value where others saw risk. He'd built a fortune in commercial real estate and tech startups, and when he died, he'd left everything to his only daughter, hidden inside an irrevocable trust that Jameson knew nothing about. Imani had honored her father's wishes, keeping the inheritance private, using it to learn, to invest, to build her own empire quietly, while her husband assumed she was just another housewife with too much time and too little purpose. The accident had changed her, yes, but not in the way Jameson thought. It had sharpened her focus, stripped away the distractions, and forced her to see the world with brutal clarity. While he saw her as broken, she'd been rebuilding herself into something far more powerful than he could imagine. She scrolled through her contacts, found the number she needed, and pressed call. Thaddeus Kwame speaking. Thad, it's Imani. It's done, her attorney's voice brightened. I just saw the confirmation. Congratulations. How does it feel to own your father-in-law's company? Strange, she admitted, but necessary. What's your next move? She glanced toward the door where Jameson had exited moments ago. I think it's time for a board meeting. One he won't forget. When? This afternoon. Can you arrange it? Consider it done. Imani, are you sure about this? Once you reveal yourself, there's no going back. She looked down at her wheelchair, at the custom controls she'd mastered, at the body that had betrayed her but also taught her resilience. I've been invisible long enough, Thad. It's time people see what I've really been doing. Understood. I'll have everything ready by 2 o'clock, thank you. She ended the call and sat back, her heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Across town, Jameson Reed was probably sitting in some coffee shop, complaining to his colleagues about his burdensome wife, completely unaware that the life he knew was about to collapse beneath him. Imani wheeled herself to the window, looking out at the manicured lawn, the fountain in the center of the driveway, the wrought iron gates that had always felt more like a cage than a symbol of luxury. She'd played the role he wanted for too long. The grateful wife. The pitiable figure who needed his charity to survive. But that ended today. She picked up her phone again, scrolling through her messages until she found the one she was looking for. It was from her mother, sent last week. Baby, strength isn't about standing. It's about standing up for yourself, no matter where you're sitting. Imani smiled, a sad, knowing smile that held years of hurt and determination. I hear you, Mama, she whispered to the empty room. Loud and clear, she finished her cold coffee in one long swallow, set the cup down, and wheeled herself toward the home office she'd converted into her private sanctuary. Inside, 3 monitors glowed with financial data, stock tickers, and email threads from CEOs, venture capitalists, and board members who knew her only by her reputation, not her physical limitations. She had work to do. By the time Jameson Reed walked into that boardroom later today, everything he thought he knew about power, about worth, about his useless wife in her wheelchair, would be shattered beyond recognition. And she would be there to watch every moment of it. The Reed Automotive Solutions headquarters sat in the heart of Atlanta's business district, a 15-story glass tower that reflected the city skyline in shimmering panels. Once, it had been a symbol of innovation and success. Now, it represented desperation, a company hemorrhaging money, losing contracts, and teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Jameson Reed sat in the executive conference room on the 14th floor, his father beside him, both men wearing expressions of barely concealed panic. Around the table sat the remaining board members, 5 people who'd watched Gerald Reed's empire crumble over the past 3 years. There were the Johnsons, Harold and Diane, longtime investors who'd made their fortune in logistics. There was Marcus Chen, the CFO who'd been trying to stop the bleeding with increasingly desperate cost-cutting measures. Beside him sat Loretta Washington, the operations director who'd been with the company for 20 years. And finally, there was Calvin Pierce, the attorney who specialized in bankruptcy proceedings, present because everyone knew it was only a matter of time. Gentlemen, ladies, Gerald Reed began, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. He was 68, gray-haired, with deep lines carved into his face from stress and sleepless nights. Thank you for coming on such short notice. As you know, we've been in negotiations with several potential buyers, hoping to find a way to keep this company afloat and preserve jobs. How many offers have you received? Harold Johnson asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. 3. Marcus Chen replied, sliding folders across the table, all of them significantly below market value, and all contingent on massive layoffs and asset liquidation. Diane Johnson flipped through the documents, her manicured nails clicking against the paper. These are insulting. They're not trying to save the company, they're trying to strip it for parts. Which is why we've rejected them, Gerald said. But we're running out of options. The debt payments are coming due, and if we can't secure new financing or find a buyer who actually cares about preserving our legacy. The conference room door opened. Everyone turned. A woman in an impeccably tailored burgundy blazer and black slacks entered, her wheelchair moving with smooth precision across the plush carpeting. Her locks were styled in an elegant crown, small diamond studs glinting in her ears. She carried a leather portfolio across her lap, her posture straight, her expression calm and authoritative. Behind her walked Thaddeus Kwame, her attorney, a tall man in his 50s with silver-streaked hair and an expensive navy suit. Jameson's mouth fell open. "Imani? What the hell are you doing here?" She didn't look at him. Instead, she wheeled herself to the head of the table, the empty chair being smoothly moved aside by Thaddeus. She positioned herself directly across from Gerald Reed, set her portfolio on the table, and met his confused gaze with unwavering confidence. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice clear and professional. "My name is Imani Okafor Reed, though you may know me better as your son's wife. I'm here representing Meridian Holdings, the private equity firm that acquired controlling interest in Reed Automotive Solutions as of 8 o'clock this morning." The room went silent. Gerald blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me correctly. As of today, I own 65% of this company. The transaction was completed overnight. All regulatory approvals secured, all financial transfers verified. Meridian Holdings is now the majority shareholder of Reed Automotive Solutions." Jameson shot to his feet, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. "That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. You can't." "Sit down, Mr. Reed," Thaddeus said coldly. "Your father's company is no longer his to control. If you wish to remain in this room, you'll conduct yourself professionally." Jameson looked at his father, then at Imani, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and rising anger. "This is insane. Dad, tell them this is insane." Gerald Reed stared at Imani, his expression unreadable. "Is this real?" She opened her portfolio, sliding documents across the table. Stock certificates, wire transfer receipts, acquisition agreements signed by your attorneys and approved by your board. It's all there. Meridian Holdings purchased the company through a combination of cash reserves and secured financing at extremely favorable rates. We've also negotiated settlements with your primary creditors, restructured your debt obligations, and secured new supply contracts with 3 major automotive manufacturers. Marcus Chen grabbed the documents, his eyes scanning frantically. "These numbers, these are real. The debt restructuring alone would save us millions in interest payments." Loretta Washington leaned forward, her voice cautious. "Why would you do this? Why would you save a failing company?" Imani's gaze finally shifted to Jameson, who stood frozen, his face pale. "Because I believe in second chances, Ms. Washington. I believe in preserving legacies, protecting jobs, and proving that value exists even in places others have written off." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Harold Johnson cleared his throat. "Miss Okafor Reed, with all due respect, you're asking us to believe that you, a woman we've never heard of in any business capacity, managed to secure $600 million in financing overnight to purchase this company. Forgive me, but that's difficult to accept." "I understand your skepticism," Imani replied smoothly, "which is why I've brought documentation of my holdings, my investment history, and my credentials. Meridian Holdings has been operating for 3 years, during which we've acquired stakes in 7 companies across technology, real estate, and manufacturing. Our portfolio is valued at approximately $1.2 billion, with average annual returns of 18%. My father, Kwame Okafor, was a venture capitalist and commercial real estate developer who built his fortune from nothing. When he passed, he left everything to me in a trust designed to be managed independently of any marital assets." She slid another folder toward the center of the table. "Inside, you'll find letters of reference from Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Fidelity Investments. You'll also find my educational credentials, MBA from Wharton, undergraduate degree in economics from Spelman College, and certification in corporate finance from the CFA Institute. I've been building my career quietly, intentionally, Because I learned early that respect is earned through results, not announcements. Diane Johnson opened the folder, her eyebrows rising as she scanned the contents. This is legitimate. These are real credentials, real references. Calvin Pierce, the bankruptcy attorney, leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. I'll be damned. You actually did it. I did, Imani confirmed. And now, I'm here to present my vision for Reed Automotive Solutions moving forward. Jameson finally found his voice, though it came out strangled. You lied to me. For years, you lied. She turned to him, her expression softening slightly. I didn't lie, Jameson. I simply didn't advertise. You never asked about my family's wealth. You never asked what I did with my time. You assumed I was helpless, dependent, useless. I let you believe that because it gave me the freedom to work without interference. You let me think. He stopped, his hands balling into fists. You let me believe you were nothing? No, she said quietly. You convinced yourself I was nothing. I just stopped trying to correct you. Gerald Reed cleared his throat, his voice heavy. Imani, why are you doing this? Why save my company? You could have let it fail. Let me lose everything. She met his eyes, and for the first time her professional mask cracked slightly. Because despite everything, this company represents something important. It employs 400 people, Mr. Reed. 400 families who depend on steady paychecks, health insurance, and retirement plans. When I looked at your books, I didn't see a lost cause. I saw mismanagement, poor strategy, and a failure to adapt. But I also saw potential. I saw skilled workers, valuable patents, and infrastructure that, with the right leadership, could be profitable again. And you think you can provide that leadership? Loretta Washington asked, her tone respectful but challenging. I know I can, Imani replied. I've spent the past 8 months analyzing every aspect of this company. I've identified inefficiencies, redundant departments, and outdated processes. I've also identified opportunities, emerging markets, technological innovations, and strategic partnerships that could position Reed Automotive Solutions as a leader in electric vehicle components, which is the future of this industry. Marcus Chen's eyes lit up. Electric vehicle components? We've been trying to break into that market for years, but the initial investment has been secured. Imani finished. Meridian Holdings is prepared to inject an additional $50 million into research and development, retooling your primary manufacturing facility, and training your workforce in new technologies. Within 18 months, I project Reed Automotive Solutions will be profitable again, with projected annual revenues exceeding $200 million. The room erupted in murmurs, board members leaning toward each other, whispering urgently. Jameson's voice cut through the noise. This is a joke. You can't seriously expect anyone to believe you pulled this off from our living room, sitting in a wheelchair, pretending to be a housewife. The room went cold. Thaddeus Kwame stepped forward, his voice hard as steel. Mr. Reed, I strongly suggest you reconsider your tone. Your wife has just saved your father's company from certain bankruptcy. She's offering your family a lifeline. The least you could do is show some basic respect. Respect? Jameson laughed bitterly. She's been lying for years, hiding millions, playing me for a fool. No, Imani interrupted, her voice rising for the first time. I've been surviving, Jameson. I've been building something real while you were busy reminding me how worthless I'd become. Every time you called me a burden, every time you suggested I was less than human because I can't walk, I was closing another deal, managing another investment, proving to myself that my value isn't measured by my legs. Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. You want to know why I didn't tell you? She continued. Because the moment you found out I had money, I knew you'd try to take it. I knew you'd see it as yours by marriage, as something you deserved because you put up with being married to a disabled woman. I protected what was mine, because I learned the hard way that you only see value in things you can use. Jameson's face twisted with rage. That's not fair. Isn't it? She wheeled closer to him, her voice dropping to something fierce and intimate. When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? When was the last time you touched me with affection instead of obligation? When was the last time you looked at me and saw your wife instead of a charity case? He opened his mouth, then closed it. No answer coming. She nodded, slowly. That's what I thought. Turning back to the board, she composed herself, straightening her blazer. I'm proposing a complete restructuring of Reed Automotive Solutions. Gerald Reed will remain as chairman emeritus, providing strategic guidance and maintaining relationships with legacy clients. Marcus Chen will transition to chief operating officer, focusing on internal efficiency. Loretta Washington will lead our new electric vehicle division. I will assume the role of CEO, effective immediately. Gerald Reed's voice was barely a whisper. You're taking my company. I'm saving your company, Imani corrected gently. And preserving your legacy. Your name will remain on the building, your employees will keep their jobs, and when this company becomes profitable again, you'll be remembered as the founder who built something that lasted. But yes, I'm taking control because I'm the only one in this room with the vision, the capital, and the determination to see it through. Harold Johnson exchanged a glance with his wife, then nodded slowly. I support this motion. As do I, Diane added. One by one, the board members voiced their agreement, their expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious hope. Calvin Pierce closed his briefcase, a wry smile on his face. Well, I guess I'm out of a job. Congratulations, Miss Okafor Reed. This is the most extraordinary acquisition I've ever witnessed. Thaddeus Kwame began distributing formal documents. These are the official transfer papers, updated employment contracts, and non-disclosure agreements. We'll need signatures from all board members by end of business today. Jameson remained standing, his body rigid with shock and fury. I can't believe this. You've been planning this for how long? 8 months, Imani replied. Since the day I overheard you on the phone, telling your father that being married to me was the worst mistake of your life. The room went silent again, every eye on Jameson. He flushed deep crimson. I was frustrated. The company was failing, you were. I was what? She tilted her head. Please, finish that sentence. He didn't. She nodded again, a sad understanding in her eyes. That's the day I decided to stop being invisible. That's the day I chose myself over you. Gerald Reed stood slowly. His movements weighted with years and regret. He walked around the table until he stood beside Imani's wheelchair. For a long moment, he just looked down at her, his expression complex, unreadable. Then he extended his hand. I underestimated you, he said quietly. I apologize for that. Imani shook his hand, her grip firm despite the tremor she felt inside. Apology accepted, Mr. Reed. Now, let's get to work. The sun had set by the time the board meeting concluded, Atlanta's skyline transforming into a canvas of glittering lights against the darkening sky. Imani sat alone in what was now her office, the former executive suite that overlooked the city. Thaddeus had left an hour ago, promising to file all necessary paperwork with the Securities and Exchange Commission by morning. The board members had departed with a mixture of excitement and apprehension, uncertain about the future but willing to trust the woman who'd just saved their company from oblivion. Only Jameson remained, standing in the doorway, his silhouette backlit by the hallway's fluorescent glow. Can I come in? He asked, his voice stripped of its earlier anger, replaced by something raw and uncertain. Imani didn't turn from the window. It's my office. I suppose I can't stop you. He entered slowly, closing the door behind him. For a while, he just stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the back of her wheelchair as if seeing it for the first time. "I don't even know what to say," he finally admitted. "Then, don't say anything." "Imani, do you know what the hardest part was?" She turned her chair to face him, her expression composed but her eyes revealing the depth of pain beneath. "It wasn't the accident. It wasn't learning to use this wheelchair or accepting that I'd never walk again. It was watching you slowly start to hate me for it." He flinched. "I never hated you. Didn't you?" She wheeled closer. "You hated what I represented. Limitation, responsibility, a future that didn't match the fantasy you'd built in your head. You hated that I couldn't be the trophy wife who attended galas and cocktail parties, who looked perfect on your arm. You hated that I needed help, that I required accommodations, that I wasn't easy anymore. That's not fair. But it's true." Her voice didn't rise. She didn't need to shout to make him feel every word. "I saw it in the way you stopped kissing me goodbye, in the way you found excuses to work late, in the way you looked through me instead of at me. You didn't just lose attraction, Jameson. You lost basic human decency." He sank into the chair across from her desk, his head in his hands. "I didn't know how to handle it. One day we were planning trips to Thailand and talking about starting a family, and the next, everything changed. I felt trapped, suffocated. I know that makes me sound terrible, but it's the truth. At least you're being honest for once," she said quietly. "But here's the thing you never understood. I felt trapped too. I was trapped in a body that betrayed me, in a marriage that became a prison, in a life where I couldn't even grieve my losses because I was too busy managing yours." "My losses?" "Yes, Jameson, your losses, because you made the accident about you. About how your life changed, how your plans were ruined, how hard it was for you to be married to someone in a wheelchair. You never once asked how hard it was for me." The silence that followed was heavy with years of unspoken pain. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm genuinely sorry." Imani studied him, searching for sincerity in his slumped shoulders and downcast eyes. She found it, but she also found something else. The realization that apologies, however genuine, couldn't rebuild what had been destroyed. "I believe you," she said. "But sorry doesn't change what happened. It doesn't erase the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'd ever feel like a whole person again. It doesn't undo the humiliation of being called useless, or dead weight, or a burden. Words have consequences, Jameson. They build worlds or burn them down. You chose to burn." He looked up at her, tears glistening in his eyes. "Is there any way forward? Any chance we could?" "No," she interrupted gently but firmly. "There isn't. This marriage ended the moment you stopped seeing me as your partner and started seeing me as your obligation. I've filed for divorce. The papers will be served tomorrow." "Imani, please. I'm not doing this to hurt you," she continued. "I'm doing this because I finally understand my worth. I understand that being in a wheelchair doesn't make me less deserving of love, respect, and partnership. I understand that I've built something extraordinary, not despite my disability, but alongside it. I learned to be stronger, sharper, more determined. I learned that mobility and value aren't the same thing." She wheeled to the window again, looking out at the city she'd conquered quietly, from the shadows. "My father used to tell me a story about a bird with a broken wing. Everyone assumed it would die, that it was too damaged to survive. But that bird adapted. It learned to find food on the ground, to build its nest lower, to survive in ways other birds never had to consider. And eventually, its wing healed just enough that it could fly again. Not as high as before, but high enough to see the world from a new perspective." "You're the bird," Jameson said softly. "We're all the bird at some point," she replied. "We all face moments that break us, that force us to adapt or die. The difference is, I chose to adapt. You chose to resent." He stood, walking to stand beside her, both of them looking out at Atlanta's sprawling landscape. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. What you did today, saving my father's company, that was extraordinary. Thank you. Will you let me stay on? At the company? She considered the question, weighing the professional against the personal. That depends. Can you work for me without resentment? Can you take orders from the woman you called useless this morning? Can you sit in meetings and contribute ideas without your ego destroying the progress we need to make? He took a long breath, then nodded slowly. I think so. I'd like to try. Then you can stay, but not in your current role. You'll move to business development, working under Loretta Washington. You'll earn your position through performance, not nepotism. You'll be evaluated quarterly, and if you're not meeting expectations, you'll be replaced. Do you understand? Yes. Good. She turned her chair toward the door. Now, I have work to do. We have a company to rebuild, 400 employees counting on us, and a legacy to honor. I suggest you go home, get some rest, and come back tomorrow ready to contribute. Jameson lingered, clearly wanting to say more, but ultimately, he simply nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Alone again, Imani allowed herself to feel the full weight of the day. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened her desk drawer and pulled out a framed photograph, one she'd kept hidden for years. It showed her father, Kwame Okafor, standing beside a younger version of herself on her college graduation day. He was beaming with pride, one arm around her shoulders, his other hand making a peace sign toward the camera. I did it, Daddy, she whispered, her voice cracking. I built something real. I proved them all wrong. She traced his face with her fingertip, remembering his laugh, his wisdom, his unwavering belief that she could accomplish anything she set her mind to. He'd taught her about compound interest and market analysis before she was 10. He'd shown her that wealth wasn't just about money. It was about leverage, strategy, and timing. Most importantly, he'd taught her that limitations were often just illusions created by people too comfortable to imagine alternatives. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, I'm watching the news, baby. They're talking about the mysterious billionaire who saved Reed Automotive. I told them my daughter's no mystery, she's a miracle. Call me when you can. I love you. Imani smiled through her tears, typing back, love you too, Mama. I'll call soon. Promise? More texts flooded in. Congratulations from former classmates, business associates, and friends who'd known about her work but had respected her privacy. News outlets requesting interviews, investment firms proposing partnerships, and headhunters offering to connect her with other struggling companies that might benefit from her expertise. She scrolled through them all, feeling simultaneously overwhelmed and validated. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to find Loretta Washington standing in the doorway, her expression warm but professional. I hope I'm not disturbing you, Loretta said. Not at all. Please, come in. Loretta entered, sitting across from Imani with the ease of someone who'd seen enough boardroom drama to remain unfazed. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did today. I've worked here for 20 years, watched this company grow and then watched it struggle. I was starting to accept that I'd be looking for new employment soon. What you did, saving this place, it means more than you know. Thank you, Loretta. That means a lot. I also wanted to ask about your vision for the premium vehicle division. The electric vehicle market is exploding right now, but it's also incredibly competitive. Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, they're all fighting for market share. How do we compete? Imani's professional mask slipped back into place, her mind shifting seamlessly into strategy mode. We don't compete directly. We specialize. Instead of building entire vehicles, we focus on becoming the preferred supplier for advanced battery management systems and autonomous driving components. We partner with established luxury brands who are transitioning to electric, providing the technological infrastructure they need to compete with Silicon Valley startups. Loretta leaned forward, interest sparking 10:14 p.m. In her eyes, that's brilliant. We'd be the Intel of the automotive world. Nobody knows our name, but we're in every high-end vehicle on the road. Exactly. And we leverage Reed Automotive's reputation for reliability and precision manufacturing. The legacy Gerald Reed built becomes our greatest asset instead of our weakness. They spent the next hour discussing implementation strategies, timelines, and partnership opportunities. By the time Loretta left, Imani felt energized rather than exhausted, her mind already racing ahead to the next challenge, the next opportunity, the next proof that she was exactly where she belonged. She worked until midnight, reviewing contracts, drafting emails, and creating the framework for what Reed Automotive Solutions would become under her leadership. When she finally left the building, the security guard, an older gentleman named Raymond who'd worked there for 30 years, held the door for her. "Congratulations, ma'am," he said warmly, the words already spreading. "People are saying you're going to turn this place around." "I'm certainly going to try, Raymond. How's your daughter doing? Still working on that nursing degree?" His face lit up. "You remembered. She's in her final semester now. Should be graduating in May. That's wonderful. Make sure she knows about our enhanced scholarship program for employees' children. We're expanding it next quarter." Raymond's eyes widened. "You're a blessing, ma'am. A real blessing." Imani smiled, feeling something warm and solid settle in her chest. This was why she'd done it. Not for revenge, not to prove something to Jameson, but because she genuinely believed that success meant creating opportunities for others, lifting people up instead of stepping over them. She navigated her vehicle, a specially modified luxury sedan with hand controls and a wheelchair lift, through Atlanta's quiet streets, eventually arriving at the townhouse she'd purchased 6 months ago under her Okafor name. It was smaller than the mansion she'd shared with Jameson, but it was hers, designed specifically for accessibility with wide doorways, roll-in showers, and countertops at appropriate heights. Inside, she transferred to her home wheelchair, hung up her blazer, and made herself a cup of chamomile tea. The silence here was different from the silence in the mansion. It was peaceful rather than oppressive, full of possibility instead of judgment. She sat by the window, looking out at her small garden where she'd been growing herbs and vegetables. Physical therapy had taught her that gardening was excellent for upper body strength, and she'd discovered an unexpected joy in watching things grow under her care. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed Mama. "Hey Mama, baby, I just saw the news. They're saying you bought a whole company. A $600 million company." Imani laughed. "They're not wrong. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to surprise you, and I wanted to make sure it was real before I started celebrating." Her mother's voice softened. "Your daddy would be so proud, Imani." "So incredibly proud, I know, Mama. I felt him with me today, especially when I had to make the hard decisions. I kept hearing his voice. Don't let anyone convince you you're less than extraordinary." That sounds like him. A pause. "How are you feeling?" "Really?" Imani considered the question, letting herself feel everything, the triumph, the exhaustion, the lingering pain of her marriage's end, the exhilaration of finally being seen. "I feel free," she said finally. "For the first time in years, I feel completely free." "Good. You deserve that, baby. You deserve everything good this world has to offer." They talked for another hour, catching up on family news, discussing plans for Sunday dinner, and laughing about Imani's aunt, who still didn't understand what a CEO actually did. By the time they hung up, Imani felt grounded again, connected to the people and values that truly mattered. She prepared for bed, completing her evening routine with practiced efficiency. As she lay in the darkness, her mind wandered back to that morning, to Jameson's cruel words that had once had the power to destroy her. "You're nothing but dead weight, Imani." She smiled in the darkness, a fierce, triumphant smile. Dead weight doesn't build empires, she whispered to the silence. Dead weight doesn't save companies, create jobs, or change industries. Dead weight doesn't rise. Outside her window, Atlanta slept, unaware that one of its newest power players was a woman in a wheelchair who'd been hiding in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal herself. And tomorrow, when she rolled into that boardroom as CEO, when she began the work of transforming a failing company into an industry leader, she would do it not despite her disability, but with all the strength, intelligence, and determination it had taught her. Because she'd learned the most important lesson of all: true power doesn't come from standing tall. It comes from refusing to stay down. What do you think? Did Imani do the right thing? Should she have given Jameson another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from, whether it's Miami, Toronto, Lagos, or anywhere else in the world. Your stories and perspectives make this community special. Hit subscribe if you believe in stories about real strength and resilience, and like this video if Imani's journey inspired you. See you in the next one.